Bellatrix Lestrange, a name that evokes fear, chaos, and cruelty. To most, she was nothing more than Voldemort's most fanatical servant, unhinged, sadistic, and utterly evil. But what if there's more to her story? What if Bellatrix wasn't born a monster, but slowly, tragically became one? Monsters aren't born, they're made, piece by piece. The story of Bellatrix is not one of simple villainy, but of a girl whose soul was slowly carved away until there was almost nothing left. This is her descent, the untold tragedy of Bellatrix Lestrange. Born into the noble and most ancient house of Black, Bellatrix was born into privilege, the eldest daughter of Cygnus and Drowella Black. But with that privilege came poison. The Black family upheld an ideology of blood purity with near religious zeal. Muggles and blood traitors were seen as scum. Marriage was political, power was everything. Bellatrix was never truly free. Her path was chosen for her before she even took her first breath. Bellatrix was raised to believe she was superior, and from a young age she embodied the family's expectations, powerful, obedient, and cold. Love was conditional, status was everything. She was taught to hate before she was taught to feel, told that muggles were filth, emotions were weakness, and power was everything. Unlike her cousin Sirius, who rebelled against the toxic legacy, Bellatrix embraced it, not because she wanted to, because she didn't know how not to. And in doing so, she surrendered any chance of becoming her own person. Though powerful in her own right, Bellatrix's entire world was shaped by men, by her father, her husband Rodolphus Lestrange, and above all, Lord Voldemort. Her identity wasn't something she could build, it was something that others built onto her, a daughter, a wife, a symbol. She was married off to Rodolphus, a fellow pure-blood Death Eater, a match of blood and name, but not love. There's no record of affection. Her body was accounted for, but her soul had nowhere to go. And so when a new figure rose in the shadows, a man who spoke of purity, power, and destiny, she saw in him something she had never known: permission to matter. Her heart and her obsession belonged elsewhere. Voldemort wasn't just a Dark Lord to her, he was everything her upbringing told her to value: power, vision, ruthlessness. To Bellatrix, he was everything. Voldemort wasn't just a leader, he was the answer to the void inside her. He gave her a role, a mission, and for the first time, she felt seen. He noticed her power, fed her loyalty, whispered visions of greatness. She mistook his manipulation for intimacy. She believed he needed her, when all he really needed was her obedience. But that didn't matter. Bellatrix didn't just serve Voldemort, she worshipped him, craved his approval, desired him in a way he was incapable of reciprocating. And that obsession would define and ultimately destroy her. When Voldemort fell in 1981, most Death Eaters claimed innocence. Not Bellatrix. She proudly declared her loyalty, shouting in court that the Dark Lord would rise again. It wasn't just loyalty, it was delusion. She needed him to come back because without him she was nothing. Her time in Azkaban only deepened that madness. Surrounded by Dementors, isolated from the world, she didn't break like others, she clung harder to her devotion. She spent years in a place where time decays, where joy is consumed, where the soul withers, but she didn't break. She hardened. By the time she escaped in 1996, she was no longer Bellatrix. She was barely even human. She had become a manifestation of Voldemort's will. The last remnants of Bellatrix had been devoured. What remained was Voldemort's creature, and a sadistic one at that. What makes Bellatrix's story so chilling is how completely she erased herself. By the time the Second Wizarding War began, there was no line she wouldn't cross. Every action she took, every spell she cast, was in service to someone else's cause. She no longer had identity, no ambition of her own. Her legacy was destruction, not because she wanted to rule, but because she wanted to please. She murdered her own cousin Sirius without hesitation. She tortured a teenage girl for sport. She mocked her own sister for loving her son more than the Dark Lord. Was she evil? Yes, without a doubt. But her evil was the product of something deeply broken. A woman who had been so thoroughly shaped by her world that she no longer had a self. She couldn't just serve Voldemort. She had to prove she needed nothing else. Every act of cruelty was a scream. I belong to him, I am only his. And underneath that scream was a woman who didn't know who she was anymore. Was it love? Obsession? Trauma bonding? Many fans debate whether Bellatrix loved Voldemort, but love isn't the right word. What she felt was worship, obsession, dependence. Voldemort used that. Call it what you will, but Voldemort never returned her loyalty with affection. He used her, fed her just enough attention to keep her loyal. She would die for him, kill for him, and he wouldn't flinch if she fell. And that was enough for her. She wanted purpose, even if it meant being used. Even if it meant erasing the last piece of herself to become his shadow. He never loved anyone, not even her. But he knew how to control her. He let her stay close because she was useful, because she was powerful, because she would do anything for him. And perhaps the most tragic part, she didn't care. Being used was enough. Being near him was enough. She mistook manipulation for connection, and she died never knowing the difference. In the final battle, Bellatrix dueled fiercely, but she didn't die by Voldemort's side. She was killed by Molly Weasley, a mother defending her child from a woman who had lost all concept of love. Love destroying hate. It wasn't a grand death. It was quiet, final. No one wept, no one whispered her name. It was a death fitting of a tragedy. Not in flames, but in silence. A final act of violence from a woman who had nothing left. Perhaps in death she was finally free. From Voldemort, from her past, from herself. Bellatrix Lestrange was a villain, there's no doubt about that. But villains don't just appear, they're made. Made by bloodlines obsessed with power, by childhoods without compassion, by men who exploit and discard. She wasn't just evil, she was erased, rewritten, and that is what makes her story so terrifying. The tragedy of Bellatrix isn't just what she did. It's what she lost before she even had the chance to become anything else. But she was denied that chance from the very moment she was born.